So I'm live at the Red House with Timothy Roberts, and we're talking about
Here we are.
his drum companies. And so you were just breaking down the different brands. Will you go through those one more time, and so I can like kind of categorize those in my head again?
So Reverie is custom drums. Timothy Roberts Cymbals is handcrafted cymbals, which we can get into what that even is. And then there's Ring Percussion, which is percussion accessories, and then Mod Cymbals, which is pretty connected to Timothy Roberts Cymbals because I'm the one that does all the modifications and all the original cymbals.
All right. So how long have you been doing this?
I've had the drum company for 6 years, the percussion company for 4, and about the same with the cymbal companies, about 3 or 4 years. Before that, I played music professionally, which sounds like super intense or legit, but it's like you barely make enough to put food on your table every month.
Right.
And, as a lot of musicians I know understand. So I did that before for about a decade, and I just got a little sick of it and wanted to have something that could pay the bills and something I could do during the day, and then I could still play music at night. And I also wanted to be able to choose the music I did play and not be so committed to like whatever came along. I had to say yes because I needed to make rent, you know.
So when you started playing music, were you a drummer in these bands and stuff?
Drummer, and so I did a lot of like studio stuff, and then I played a lot in churches. I lived in Charlotte at the time, and I would play at churches every Sunday and do little conferences and travel around, and it was fun. It just gave me the opportunity to play. I just wanted to play. I was intending to be a jazz drummer, a professional jazz drummer. You know, when you're straight out of college, you don't know the way things work at all. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to Charlotte, North Carolina and be a professional jazz musician. And I got there and I was like, okay, there's barely any jazz gigs. There's like 5 guys that have a lock on every gig. Mm. And there's like a bajillion churches that all need a drummer on a Sunday. So that became my path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does somebody just start making drums? Like what was the process like? Did it start with the drums?
Yeah, it started with drums. I'd always wanted to put together a snare drum. And I had a teacher, or one of the grad students at the school I went to, he brought in a kit that he made one time, and he was like, yeah, it's actually fairly simple to just buy the parts, you know, drill the shell, put the hardware on, and you've made your own drum, and it's way cheaper than buying a brand new kit. And I was like, okay. So I stored that away in my brain, and then I actually had kind of a big failure moment in my playing career where I got on this gig that was a touring gig, and I was out playing and living the dream, and then I got fired after about 6 months of doing it. So it was like I was back to square one, not knowing what to do, and the first idea that came in my head was, what if you just built a snare drum and then saw what happened? And I don't even remember the transition from like ordering the parts to just being like, this is what I'm going to do, whatever it becomes, but like I'm going to be making drums. And I just did a lot of experimentation. I ruined a lot of shells. I looked up YouTube videos. I found some online forums and just taught myself very slowly, but I put in enough time early on to see growth fairly quick. And started my company in 2015, and it's been a blast. It's been like a wild ride ever since then.
Man, when Chazare told me about it, it immediately clicked in my head. I was like, oh my God, like that's the type thing. I mean, I know people that build instruments and stuff, but it never would have occurred to me that there could be a drum manufacturer and a cymbal company in Winston-Salem. Yeah. And I just like, it's the coolest thing. It's just extremely cool to me that is going on.
Yeah, like, it's cool. It's also just way less, to me, it's way less cool than it sounds. Like it has a really cool sound to it. But yeah, it's tough. And there's just a lot of times where you're just like in the shop for just hours, and you just ruin something that you've spent like 10 hours on, and then you chuck it and you start over. Like there was just a lot of that. And yeah, there hasn't been many drum companies in North Carolina, but there's been a handful, and it's just always tough to sustain because if you're just a drum maker, I mean, there's just umpteen drum makers out there. So you have to distinguish yourself among a crowd of tons of companies, and a lot of the companies make drums that are way cheaper because they get, they're ordering their parts, thousands of their lugs at a single time. So me falling into having the other brands actually has helped me survive. I think I, definitely for a little bit was in survival mode. Like, how am I going to make this work? But we've kind of come through and we're rolling. So I feel really grateful.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that, man. I mean, it's like, well, first, I mean, I've looked at like a bunch of your stuff. Your drums are just beautiful. Your cymbals are especially beautiful. Where, like, is this like in a warehouse or somewhere? Like, what kind of space do you work in?
It's in the basement level of my house. My wife and I bought a home right before the world shut down. And before that, I was renting a house, and it was a little bit of a weird situation working out of the house, and the tenant or the landlords were a little bit weird about it. And I just knew when we bought a house, it had to be so specific in order to have what I needed space-wise to actually do it. But we found a house and bought it like literally in March of 2020, and it was like a week before everything shut down. We moved in, and so yeah, bottom level of my house, I've got my whole garage has been gutted and turned into the shop for all of the dusty, dirty stuff, and then I've got a whole nother side of it that's for assembly and a little studio there for demos and stuff like that. So
yeah. Keeping it at home.
Oh yeah, I've wanted for a while. I've had a dream of having a shop. There's a guy named Bryson Nelson in Nashville, Tennessee, who has Nelson's Drum Shop, and it's this super hip, cool drum shop with brick walls everywhere, and he just sells vintage drums, and it's like the coolest place ever. And I've always had a dream of having a place like that in Winston. Mm-hmm. Winston being such a central location in North Carolina, as bands are coming through there, you pretty much drive 40 right through Winston if you're going from Charlotte to Raleigh or whatever. So I have that dream, but just the leap to actually go to leasing a space or buying a space it's a very large leap. So we're probably still a few years away from that.
I could imagine it though. I mean I can imagine a lot of cool stuff that could be associated with a space like that, or what you could do with it,
Yeah, I think just trying to make for me, I'm trying to get as far away from like a digital life as possible. Like I'm trying to get more into human to human interaction conversations. All my drums are, people buy my drums pretty much all from what they see on their phone and the demos, and that's fine. And that's just where we're at right now. But I would love for there to be a place for people to gather. And I begrudgingly do all the social media stuff because you have to do it in order to make it work. But the more analog I can make my life, I want to go that route. So even if it's tough to pull together the funds to have a physical location that people can visit, I definitely want to go that route eventually.
Yeah, I feel that completely. Yeah. Tell me more about the analog thing. Like, what is it about? I sense a bit of like a similar frustration maybe to my own with the digital landscape we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I understand. I think our culture is very immediate. Everything has to be immediate, and that's like what social media is like grabbing your attention in a split second. And it works because it addicts our brain. It makes our brains addicted to that feeling that we get when we have a like or we have a video pop up immediately, and we're bored, so we just pull our phone out, and I think we lose out on a lot of deeper experiences by having that be our first instinct whenever we're bored. We don't have to sit and be bored and then create from that space.
Yeah.
I've heard some psychologists talk about in the development of children, boredom is like one of the best things for developing a creative mind. Because it forces you to just figure out what you're going to occupy your mental space with. And so you have to come up with something. You have to create a story or think up a scenario to play with your little G.I. Joes or whatever, and you create a movie, and then you go show your parents the movie you created. But if you have a phone that you can just look at a video, we're making our brains more shallow, I think.
Man, I really think that's probably true. I guess it was earlier this year, I had a day where I'm a songwriter. But for those watching, you and I are meeting each other today for the first time.
Yeah.
We've hardly got to talk at all. We've just been getting to know each other. And so, anyway, for me, I'm a songwriter, and that's my main interest in music at this point. I used to be a drummer, drumming was my kind of introduction into music, and I kind of grew from there. But I've written a lot of songs, and I've slowed down a lot over the last few years or whatever. And I sometimes have these stories in my head about what that is. Like, oh, I'm taking my time. I've written enough songs. I've got too much to record. I don't need to write that much. Earlier this year or last year, sometime last year, my power went out for like a day. And immediately when I found myself bored, I started writing songs. And I was like,
oh, yeah,
that is what's wrong with me. Is like, that's why I don't write songs, because I've always got my mind occupied elsewhere with just like a podcast in the background, a show I'm going to watch later, some this or some of that, or some job, some task I have to get done.
Yeah.
And I'm not giving myself that time to actually just let my mind be curious enough to get creative.
Yeah, and here's a question for you. I would imagine that being I'm not a songwriter, but I used to write poetry a lot, actually. I had a little like blog that I would post, and I wouldn't share anything. I didn't like tell people about it at all, but I just used it as an outlet to, but I'm not a songwriter, but I would imagine that writing a song, do you ever just write songs for yourself, or do you find that you feel like you need to, if you're going to write a song, you need to release it so it's out and people can experience it?
Man, that's a good question.
I just turned this into my podcast right now.
Hey, man, make yourself at home. Mi casa y su casa. It's a hard balance to describe, because every song I write, I'm aware of the possibility that it might be shared. And I feel like if I'm writing it, I want it to be good enough to be shared.
Yeah.
But I like to believe that, and I can say with confidence, like every song I write, it's gonna be a little bit esoteric, pointed at me. It's gonna be a little bit more like, I know what I'm doing with it. I know what I'm kind of like saying or exploring, and that's not something that's going to be explicit to everybody.
Yeah.
So in some way, there's this meaning, there's this like realm that it's in that absolutely just belongs to me, and there's no way for me to even articulate what that is to enough that it could be that much of that same thing to somebody else. But
so in that sense, is it more that you almost prefer you could just write songs by yourself for yourself, or?
No, I wouldn't say so, because I do think, like, I don't know. It's the same thing as when you have something quality to say in the world. It's like it can be almost like an injustice or like a shame for you to not try to share it with the world.
It's like you're withholding it from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some would say it's like some potential some potential you that you need to express and let it be judged by the world and see if the world likes it or not.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That part is necessary for me, but it just also has to have that meaningful thing that's just mine,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I connect with that. I think with what I make, I don't consider myself naturally a businessman. Like I think there are people that just have a gift for selling stuff, and I don't have any judgment towards that. If that's like something you have a natural skill towards, that's fine. We all know how that can go too far, and how when it kind of feels gross, like the used car salesman kind of vibe. I think, but for me, it's I want to create something that like touches on a deeper human experience, and it's like if it sells, fine, or if it gets popular, fine. That's not like the goal of it ever. And I notice with like my buddies that are really good songwriters, it's like they create for the sake of creating, not for the sake of any kind of affirmation necessarily. Like obviously you kind of need to be able to make your art sustainable in some form. So for me, like it's sustainable because I can sell the thing and use the money to live.
Yeah.
And I'm not like, obviously that's a huge part of art in general. It kind of has to be maybe like a necessary evil, but it's like, I think about it like focus, like what is your what's your intent and what's your focus with your art or with whatever you make? Is it, there are people that focus on the popularity side of it, and that's fine. Like, I don't have any judgment towards that, but I think there's a deeper expression when you're focusing on like the act of creating and seeing what happens, and almost like the dangerous nature of not knowing how something's going to turn out and just going for it, which I have a lot of respect for songwriters, because I feel like you kind of have to live in this dangerous space when you're writing a song. I don't know if that rings true or not.
I hope it is. I mean, that's what that's the space I would like to live in. Yes. But it is it's such a complicated picture to try to put together,
Yeah.
I don't know. You think of a song like Sitting on Top of the World or Wayfaring Stranger, these songs that are written probably 200 years ago now.
Right.
Those songs were just passed down from person to person. And what we now have the privilege to get to do is just look at those songs and be like, yeah, those stand the test of time because they did. The evidence of their ability to stand the test of time is that they did.
Yeah.
Now, I like to look at the past of music and the songs that have been written and assume that there's sort of a quality that's involved, and that justifies the impact that they had. And I personally still do believe that about like the 60s and 70s, like why those songs are still remembered is because they really spoke to people in that way. But I think coming back to like as business people now navigating the world, there is a bit of this sort of I see songwriters who their whole thing is, I'm going to involve my reach on social media in creating the appearance that my song is like a huge success.
Yeah.
So I'm going to like ask people as soon as it comes out, like stream it. And like, guys, we did it. We got to do 100,000 streams in a month or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, like I can't do that. Like I just can't do that. And, not to mention the question of that territory that you're in when you're doing that. What is your art? Is it something that you're doing with people to try to like get rewarded with fame?
Yep.
Are you allowed to really reveal complex ideas that challenge people if you're doing that? Not that you're allowed to, but is that gonna feed that outcome? If I came out and said, I have a really controversial idea or something, but the only way I could express it is through art, is that system of rewarding people with interaction, is that going to be as possible for something that's like a difficult piece of art to share as it is for something that's super easy and not dangerous to share?
I feel like you're bordering on the conversation of like the divide or the difference between what is pop and what is art.
Yeah.
And like that they seem to be in different spaces, and I feel like every now and then you have like a crossover where it's both at the same time somehow, like maybe like Bob Dylan, where there's like a crossover between pop and art happening. But like if something has more to say or has a heavier message, it's not going to reach the masses, which when I say pop, I think I mean like what's popular for the masses, not necessarily like pop music as a genre,
Yeah.
And it's like what is pop to me is like expedient. It's like it's immediate, it's now, it's instant gratification. Whereas art is something you have to invest in. Like if you're going to go to a museum and look at a painting, like you have to take time to go there, to sit, to look at it, to like quiet your mind. Like you have to invest something of yourself in order to receive anything. I could walk by a Michelangelo painting and just like not even look at it and just walk right by it because I'm too distracted. And it exists there and it's this amazing work of art, but I have to actually engage it first for it to be able to like tell me anything.
Yeah.
And that's like the tough part about, I think, being an artist is it's being an artist and then also making a living doing it is a tough thing.
That's the part that is tough, man. That question that we were kind of just unpacking, like being an artist and being a business person, like associating art with business, that's That's tricky too. I'm not embarrassed if I make money off of art. I enjoy that.
Yeah.
And I enjoy when my time is considered valuable
Right.
by people. But that whole thing of like treating people who love your music like they're customers, like you're trying to get money out of them.
Yeah.
I have a very hard time with that.
Yeah, totally.
But, okay, wait, customers. Yeah. Analog. That's what we were talking about.
Right, yeah.
What, I think, like, how do you picture what the alternate, like, what do you think, you were kind of describing something like the digital world that we're living in. It's like, you mentioned the word expedient, you mentioned instant gratification. Like, you're noticing these things about maybe what this digital space is doing to us. What do you think is the alternative? Like, what is it that you picture that would be more to more reflective of your values?
I think, well, one thing about the cymbal making thing that I've been getting into for the last few years is it's almost forced me to slow down, because you'll take a piece of bronze that's like completely flat and looks like a crusty brown potato chip thing, and you've got to shape it into a cymbal, and so it takes thousands of hammer strokes, and you're just sitting at an anvil for hours, like swinging a hammer. And it's just over the years of doing this, it's forced me to slow down, and it's forced me to invest something. And delayed gratification is like something I've been learning by necessity. If I'm going to make cymbals, I have to learn how to like commit to this like completely blank canvas until it becomes something. And so I think for me, it's like about investing in something. Like, it doesn't have to be anything in particular, but like, what are you going to choose to invest your time and your effort into, and do that so that you can get something a little bit deeper out of life than just the instant, like the red color of a notification. And you know, that the immediacy of that, like, if you want to experience something deeper in life, it takes investing into something and giving it a lot of time to see it grow. Like, I said it earlier, like it's having a drum company sounds cool, but it's way less cool in reality because so many times I'm just by myself or like with my employees down in my shop, just doing the most grueling work that is it's so not sexy, you know, but like, obviously when I post a photo on Instagram, it looks all sexy, and like I kind of have to do that. But, I do it begrudgingly, I guess, you know? But yeah, it's been so rewarding. It's like, it's hard and difficult and challenging, and there's tons of failure involved, but at the end of the day, there's a rewarding nature to what I get to do that is a total gift. Like, I feel like it's honestly, I didn't see this coming, honestly, in terms of like what a gift it would be. And I didn't even feel like I really created it. Like, I had a lot of people behind me helping me, so it almost felt like it organically became this thing, and I'm left going, wow, look at what I have. I can't believe I have this, and I get to do this. And I want to, like, for me, it's my attention has been turning to like, how can I help other people experience this? Because it's really cool to be able to have this kind of satisfaction with like what you put your hands to. And it's like, for me, it comes down to like embracing failure. I think that's like a big part of it, because my whole process starting this was almost like birthed out of this massive failure I had, where I got the gig that I thought was the gig, and then I got fired from it and was left going like, what do I do with my life now? It was like a total low point. And I'm looking back at that moment, realizing that moment was like such a gift. It didn't feel like a gift. It felt like the worst moment of my life, but it was such a gift. And then realizing that, like, wow, every time I've had anytime I've failed at something, and then I've picked myself up or had like even like changed my mind about failure, as not seeing it so much as like a roadblock or a bad thing, but almost seeing the opportunity of failure, like what it can provide me moving forward, you know. And I don't know, there's a lot there. I kind of went all over the place, but
I think it's great though.
Yeah.
I mean, so when you're the experience you would be inspired to give to other people, is it about like the physical aspect of creating something that you can actually physically touch, or is it more in that camp, that second part you were talking about, like sort of being able to reorganize where we put our effort and like what it means to like fail and succeed and all that?
I think both. Yeah, I think there's a part of it that if you're called to do something with your hands, it's awesome. Like I can say nothing but great things about like just choose to make something with your hands, and like the act of putting effort into something and being able to hold it at the end of however many hours of crafting is it's a great feeling. And it's like it made me realize that it was something I never got from being a musician. And I never wrote my own music. I never had my own band per se. I was always like a sideman serving other people's music. But even if I was like a songwriter, I could imagine it's like hard to hold a song, you know. I guess if you have a CD, you can hold a CD, but the physical act of making a product like I do is rewarding in one way, but I think overarchingly it's just what are you investing your time into, and how do you choose to, like, without caring if people care, you know?
Yeah.
Just do it for the sake of doing it. And like, you'll learn something about yourself. Like, great art teaches us a lot about ourselves if we'll let it, you know? It's not just like a painting or a song or whatever. It says something to us and how we experience it.
Yeah.
That can be really fulfilling, I think.
I mean, a great painting, a great statue, and not only does it show vision and craft, but like it says something about what kind of deep, this is what I think people miss sometimes, is like, even with music too, like when you see or hear somebody do something extraordinary, it's not just that action that is interesting to experience. It's like the knowledge that humans are capable of that. Humans are capable of like that depth of that skill or that craft. And like, if you dedicate enough time to it, you as a viewer could be capable.
It's like, I'm human too. I'm human just like the human that made this.
Exactly.
How did they do that? Like, there's something that is all of a sudden I'm connected.
Deep devotion. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that, man. I think that's really cool. That I think it's really worthwhile thing. I mean, that's honestly where I'm coming from with a lot of, I've done over the years a lot of songwriter events where I've really tried to, I almost put out the message sometimes with some things I do, like, hey, everyone in the world, become a songwriter. Like, you should do it. And I know that that's not everyone's calling. Like, people are going to do other stuff, but I think, I really identify a lot with this thing you're tapping into that's like the importance of other people's tapping into their own creative, their own spirit as a creator rather than just as like a recipient of the world around them.
Yeah. And I think too about like what you just said, not everybody is called to whatever it is, you know, and I'm starting to try to develop this thought of, would you do certain things if you knew no one would ever see it? Like, just for the sake of doing it. Like, could you live a quiet life without anyone knowing who you are and be satisfied? And the answer that comes pretty quickly is you start to study like third world countries, and the happiness levels in third world countries is like way higher than us in America. So that says to me that, yeah, it's possible, but we have so much work to do as a society to like wrench ourselves from just social media, technology, the immediacy of how available everything is at all times. Like, we obviously, people that are dirt poor have a lot of problems in life, and we have problems as like wealthy, privileged people. Our problems just look differently. We have the hardest time actually tapping into beauty, like real beauty, you know, and hardest time stilling ourselves to just experience a moment, or like look at the trees. And like, I'm saying that, but I can't do it.
Yeah.
Because I got my phone and I'm like always on emails, and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. But I've had those moments where I've stilled myself enough just to like look at the trees and then I'm able to like, all of a sudden all these thoughts come up and those thoughts lead in certain places I wasn't expecting. And all of a sudden I'm thinking about like a new idea for a product or like a new thing I could try with the cymbals. And then all of a sudden it's like creativity is happening just because I sort of embraced boredom for a moment.
Yeah. Is that something you're going to like, are you trying to like bring that into your life more?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah. And like I said earlier, like the cymbal making thing has given me context, has given me like a pursuit where I can embrace that a little bit because it's just so monotonous. And so like, it feels like the same thing for hours, but you're constantly reacting to the material and you just don't have time or energy to think about anything, but just be in the moment present with this piece of metal that you're trying to shape.
Yeah.
And so it stills your mind. And I also just love taking long showers because you can't like scroll your phone in a long shower. You're just sitting there like cleaning yourself. And then all of a sudden I just find myself thinking and my thoughts go in places and I start having ideas. And so I've learned to embrace certain moments and realize like what the gift that they are, and knowing that like, okay, I get out of the shower, I get dressed, and then I got to go sit at my computer and type out emails,
Yeah.
And becoming like regimented almost in a way to where really like set aside that time for embracing those moments where I go a little deeper than just the surface level, mundane.
Yeah, I love that. As I got to thinking about it, so I worked downtown for a couple years. And when I got laid off from when COVID happened, I ended up finding myself with a job with a log cabin company where we just were building log cabins. And it too is something that sounds much more romantic than it was. And
it
was
grueling hard work, I bet.
It was grueling and dangerous and like rough, it was like toward the end of it when I really started to accept that I was like risking my hands too much as a guitar player and as a drummer and stuff.
Right.
That's when I finally reached a point where I said, I think this is just too risky or whatever.
Yeah.
But I wrote a lot of songs when I was doing that job. And oddly, like when I've had easier jobs, easier on my body and more demanding on my mind and less of the physical monotonous demand and more of the mental kind of constant demand, I write way less words. And when I had that job, one of the main good things I can say about it is that I would come home tired and I would write songs. Like it just, the stuff was there. And I think it was because not only was I exercising my body a lot, all day long, but
Which clears your mind in a way.
Exactly.
That's,
Exactly. But also had that time you were talking about to be monotonous and to like just do the same thing over and over and over and let your mind kind of, it's almost like it's almost like you can dream while you're awake, dream while you function. It's just.
Do you know the poet Wendell Berry by chance?
I don't think.
You should check him out. He is, I don't know if he's still alive. He might have passed by now, but he's a farmer, I think, in West Virginia, maybe. But like all he does or did with his life was farm and write poetry. And like he would sit at the same desk every single day looking at the same image of the outdoors of his farm and writing poetry. Yeah. And just the stuff that he writes is, I would recommend anyone check out his stuff.
I will check him out for sure. And so should you guys.
Yes, please do.
You guys hiding in the microphone.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Something about being able to pull back and like quiet yourself that is just so beneficial for like a healthy, balanced life.
Yeah, man. It's necessary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, so I don't know where this is going to go.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about some stuff.
Let's just dive in.
Let's dive in. You said something as we were kind of just getting introduced to each other that I thought also might be a fun jump off point to see where this would go.
Yeah.
We both, I get the impression we both have a different relationship now with religion as a subject than we did when we were young kids.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
What was your experience?
Yeah. So I'll be quick to say, like, I don't feel like I'm anti what I came from.
Yeah.
I think there have been seasons where I was anti and felt a little bit more like fight the power, angry about my experiences. And I've come to a place of just like appreciating it a lot more. But almost as we all have to do, we grow up in a culture, and we're great observers. Kids are amazing observers. So you look around at what you see and you think, okay, this is the way the world is. But you don't realize until you get older, maybe you move out of your house, go to college, do whatever, that like the world's a big place, and there's a lot of ideas, and there's a lot of cultures, and there's a lot of places, and you start to get opened up to new ideas that you were never aware of as a kid. And so I grew up in like a pretty charismatic evangelical church. My dad was the worship pastor there for 24 or 25 years. My uncle is still the pastor there. That's where I learned how to play drums. Like I got to play at like 11 years old. I got to be on the stage playing. I'm sure I was terrible, but my dad put me up there and was like, I'm going to give my kid like some experience, a much needed experience. Yeah. And I guess after I graduated college and I moved to Charlotte and I started playing in churches again, I was kind of in the same culture again. I started traveling with this artist who started introducing me to people like Wendell Berry, and it was like I started to see like a deeper, like it was like a different side of spirituality that I wasn't aware of, and it caused me to kind of look at what I came from and realize, maybe this isn't who I am. Maybe there's something else that I'm more interested in, and like I still play at churches all the time, but I think for me. In like the worldwide church, there's so many fractions of Christianity and so many denominations and different expressions of what it is. And I think I'm in a place where I'm just trying to balance different truths and like stand in the middle almost between, and like not be fundamentalist honestly about anything. Like fundamentalism to me is not just reserved for fundamentalist Baptist Christians. Like fundamentalism is a ideology that can exist anywhere. You know, it can exist in music, and it can exist in atheism, in Buddhism. It can be anywhere. And so it's just this idea, this rigid idea that the world is one way. And so I'm trying to learn how to hold truths in balance, in tension almost. And it has me a little bit less quick to say, I think this, and like really plant my flag as like, this is the way the world works and how everyone should experience the world, and more almost observant.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I too am someone who I see fundamentalism everywhere. I think I phrase it slightly differently. I think there, and maybe you would agree with this. I don't think fundamentalism is the ideology. I think every ideology can be adhered to by fundamentalists or whatever. Like there are fundamentalists in every ideology.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe I'm wrong. If you think that, were you saying that fundamentalism itself is what ideology is, or what the ideology is?
That's yeah. It makes me think of I think it's something Carl Jung said, that ideas don't have people, or no, people don't have ideas. Ideas have people.
Right. Yeah.
Which I have found to be true. Like, you know, it's true in politics. It's true in culture. It's true in everything. You know, it's like we can be taken by an idea, and an idea that's just rigid and solid, and it can't move or change or shift. And it's a protection mechanism. Like when fundamentalism is a way to protect yourself, because you're able to wall off your experience of life and say, this is how everything works. Mm-hmm. And you're able to kind of fend off different ideas, and it doesn't have to challenge you. You can kind of rest and relax a little bit and be like, I know how the world works. And it's a more of a dangerous thing to approach uncertainty. Which, I mean, I say this, I sound like I'm not a Christian, but I consider myself a Christian. You know, like I actually read the Bible, and like I read about Jesus, I read what he said. I try to incorporate that into my life, and I try to treat people the way he treated people, you know, and that matters to me a lot. But I think to me, it's about like, I love America. I love, in a sense, I love capitalism because I'm able to make a living doing what I love to do. So I'll say that as a caveat, but I think that the American mentality has been connected to the church and connected to Christianity in a way that has kind of morphed it into something that it isn't, you know, like you can't take capitalism and mesh it with Christianity and expect it to stay Christianity. to my mind, like, you know, I played in a lot of churches when I was in Charlotte. I saw a lot of different expressions of you know, Christianity, the Baptist, Presbyterian, you know, all of it. And, you know, you've got, and I have grace for this. I mean, I think I understand, like, a pastor has to keep the lights on and a pastor has to keep attendance up, and they have to make sure the tithe dollars are coming in so they can pay the staff and they can pay for the lights and the stage and the musicians and all that. So there's just realities associated with running a business, you know. But then all of a sudden, it's just very difficult for that not to seep into the theology and to morph it. And all of a sudden, you have this phenomena of rock star pastors, you know, and that pastors selling their newest book and going on tour, and they're part of writing the music for the team, and they're making, you know, they got all their revenue streams from their, and it's just American Christianity. It's not, it feels like it lacks something, and it feels kind of like a dangerous territory to take, like the message of Jesus, you know?
Yeah. I mean, man, when you put it that way, that's like the problem with most ideologies that are most prominent in the country right now. It's just that all of them have seeds. They come of something that means to be used for good. They all come from some kind of place. They all represent something that's useful, I guess is the point. And like something that's worth knowing. But when for some reason, I mean, we're not the first. Really, we've had a very long history, I suppose, of people organizing around ideas way too much and with too much rigidity. Yeah, you know, so it's not anything brand new, but now there's so many different ideas that people are organizing around. I think compared to, I don't know, back when. For now, society is going to be all Puritan, and then next society is going to be all this, you know.
Yeah, like, society tends to swing in a way. Like we have, I would say, like, you know, you had like the hippie movement in the 60s. Right. And it was like this reaction against the rigidity of like the system that came before that. Yeah. And then nowadays you have this segment of the culture that's almost swinging back towards like something more solid and rigid. And you have like a lot of young people that, if they haven't outright rejected the church, they're going to these like super liturgical, like kind of they're sitting in a pew and they're just loving it. Yeah. Because it's so not what they came. They're reacting against what they came from that was that hurtful.
That's so spot on. I mean, like, I'm sure there's always, look, you know, we probably see some kind of condensed version of the past. I mean, my buddy Steve Wisniewski, do you know him?
The name sounds familiar.
He's a guitar builder.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He's an old hippie, cool guy. Nice. You know, he's often dropping bombs of knowledge on me, sort of like, you think, you know, people think that the 50s were like this, but really this was going on or something. And I'm like, wow, that's not the perception I have, because we perceive it based on maybe what was most prominent. And right now, there's a lot of fractioning. There's a lot of fractioning. There's a lot of like people doing different things, and like you said, it's like a lot of the time it's people reacting to the thing that maybe is where they're not where their life has lacked balance. You know, previously,
or where they were hurt. I think people react out of a place of where they were hurt. Yeah, and try to run from it. And there's definitely, you know, wisdom in running from the thing that hurts you. Obviously, I'm not saying like
it can help you out.
It can be good to get out of bad situations. Yeah, obviously, you know. But I tend to think too, like we have this idea that we're, as a society, progressing and that like we could never be like we were back in the day. But like I tend to think of things in terms of like it's not a church problem or a world problem or a pop problem. It's a human problem. So like whether it's in the church or if it's in the, you know, the Christians say the world, right? Like it's separate or whatever, but like wherever it is, it's always based in the same kind of like human struggle that we all have, you know? So I know a lot of my buddies who just have outright rejected the church. They're like, I'm done with this. And I understand where they're coming from, you know? And then, you know, but what I also see is that like wherever you're running to, if you're like running away from this towards something, like you got to be careful not to just experience the same thing wherever you're running to, you know?
Yeah, I guess now that'd be a great reason for me to, since you've shared your story, I guess I should do the same.
Please.
Yeah, man, I guess the way I see it, I mean, I came from a much more traditional church background, like no drums allowed in church, which was devastating to me as a kid. My dad had played when I was a kid, and then like once I was old enough, they wouldn't let drums in the church anymore, and I was just like, that is so not cool.
No,
that's like that's like my destiny,
right?
And you're holding it away from me. Anyway, by the time, you know, in my teenage years, I was like super not given to how traditional it all was.
Yeah.
And like, I wanted to have complex conversations about it all. Like, hey, if we found aliens, would that mean there's no Jesus? Like, what is, you know, things like that. And, you know, I don't know. I didn't like church. I hated going to church. It was not like a more modern one or like one that had a worship band or anything. So anyway, I get into my 20s. Go hard atheist. It took me a very long time. Like I got obsessed with just almost every day watching like 2-hour, 3-hour Christian debates with like Christopher Hitchens or Sam Harris or people like that.
Totally.
And it took me a long, long time, and finally gave up. I just stepped outside of Christianity for a day to see what would happen, and then I just couldn't go back into it. I just lost the ability to see it as a truth.
Yeah.
And so then I saw myself then as like slowly becoming a hardcore materialist where all things romantic and spiritual, I pretty much kind of turned my nose up at and said like, there is no spirituality. There is no destiny. There's no grounds for poetry really. There's no grounds for anything other than just objective material.
Right.
And after some time with that, it really became very bleak feeling and stuff. And I think that's where I started to feel a bit of despair, and where that kind of created room for whatever. I'm going to start being more candid about this. So like we've already acknowledged between the two of us that we are interested in some of what Jordan Peterson has to say on this subject. And it was really his influence on me post Hitchens, because Hitchens is one of my heroes, but I found this like lacking feeling from this whole experience, and I felt betrayed by Christianity, in that maybe betrayed by family or like group affiliation or something like that. But basically I felt like people who like me tricked me into believing something that isn't true. So then I found myself deep in the atheism, found myself in like far leftist thinking, until I started noticing the same thing happen there. Like friends of mine encouraging me in my demonstration of saying things that weren't true. And it all came down to like, if I say untrue stuff, I get rewarded for it by one group or another, and it's driving me crazy. I don't want to say untrue stuff.
Right.
So I started to try to pursue something where I didn't have to say untrue stuff anymore. And then all of a sudden in came Jordan Peterson with all this stuff about how to re-understand truth from a pragmatist perspective.
Right. He gave me I feel like he gave me sort of like some ground to stand on, because I came from a very expressive expressive faith that was like very emotional. I wouldn't say that about my uncle and my dad and like how they taught, because like they taught as my dad. He obviously like spoke into my life a lot, but like the church itself and like what was taught on a Sunday morning, like it felt weighted towards like this very emotional experience of the world and how you're supposed to like tap into this spirit that's going to tell you exactly how to like heal a person, or exactly how to like tell them exactly what they experienced in life, so they have this like literal come to Jesus moment. You know? And then coming out of that, it was like I just was desperate for something that felt more solid. Like it didn't feel so like shaky ground. And then Jordan Peterson, like his stuff that he talks about with like meaning and searching for meaning and doing the hard thing that leads to having meaning in your life. Like I really connected with that element, that aspect of like what he talks about. And it helped me kind of like point me in a direction that now I feel like I'm able to sort of like hold different truths at the same time. And then like, I'm always checking myself to make sure I'm not going too far down a path. Like I don't want to ever become fundamentalist about anything.
Yeah.
I want to be able to see the beauty in different ideas.
Yeah.
I want to see the beauty in different cultures, the beauty in different kinds of people, and always take the mentality like that I can learn anything in a conversation with anyone.
Yeah.
You know, and like, because that kind of fundamentalist idea, it leads to looking at things in like a hierarchical way, to where you look at the people beneath you in status and you just kind of like shirk them off and go, well, they've got nothing to teach me because obviously they've made terrible choices in life. So like, you know, bump them.
Yep.
I'd rather look at the person who's like successful, you know. But like this is kind of maybe a tangent, but like one thing, like I've met people that have this outward appearance of success, and I know people who are like quote unquote successful, and like there's just this disturbing trend of like depression in people that are quote unquote successful.
Yeah.
And it really like it like really opened my eyes to see people that like everybody is singing their praises. Like, oh my gosh, can you believe this person? Like what they've done, they're amazing. And then to get to know them as a person and just to see like the deep anguish that was there, it was like, it just showed me that like, that's not the goal. Success is not, I guess it comes down to how you define success. Like if success means people really liking you and you being popular, to me, it feels like you're just setting yourself up for depression and depravity.
Yeah.
And so there's got to be something deeper than just this like very surface level kind of like, because the people that, you know, the masses, the thousands of people that follow me, they don't care about me. You know what I mean? Like I could like drift away and no one would really know. But like you look at that number and you go, oh, wow, that's so impressive. Just to realize how fragile that is.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's not something solid to stand on, you know, and I know I have some buddies that were popular and then they're like in their 40s or 50s now, and they're like struggling to maintain what they were. And I imagine for like creativity, and I guess I experienced this a little bit, like if I make a cymbal that sounds really good, I start a new cymbal and I'm trying to make it sound like that one rather than like giving that piece of material, that canvas, what it wants. I'm looking back, and so then I miss it. I just like, I can't recreate that magic that happened. And that's the danger of success in that sense, is like you're just drawn to look back, and then you can't catch like the spirit. You know what I mean? Like you can't catch the inspiration that's like new.
I love that analogy, man, about the cymbal.
And I still struggle with that. This week, I'm trying to recreate a cymbal I made because a customer wants a certain cymbal that I already sold. So I'm in there like trying to recreate it and realizing how much like that other one that I made, I wasn't in any kind of state of trying to do anything. I was just like creating, like, what can I do with this piece of metal? And like, I was trying something brand new that I had never done before. And so like to tap into that same mentality, I'm finding like, okay, I got to do something different to achieve this and to stick the landing, you know?
I love that, man. I mean, just the idea of like being present enough with whatever, I mean, cause that's a very interesting thing that you could plug into all of life, like being present with the true potential of the canvas, if you will, of whatever it is, the circumstance that you're working within in that moment, and not trying to make it be something else. I love the word. I love that happened to be. I love that it happened to be a cymbal, which is like a word of its own for
right?
a really poetic, meaningful word for that.
Also
analogy.
A frustrating thing when you're trying to type the word cymbal, like crash cymbal, and it always auto corrects to the other one.
Yeah, I bet that does.
Yeah, right. Every cymbal smith, if any cymbal smith is listening right now, they know that struggle.
They know the pain. One thing I want to acknowledge since we kind of opened this up is like, I don't know about you, but I personally, in my community, always kind of, when I talk about, like when we brought up Peterson or whatever, I think I just want to acknowledge that I think when you and I are talking about it, we're talking about the ultimate outcome of what it is that his message like evokes in people or inspires in people, which I think is indeed individualism, which is something that I talk about a lot on this podcast. Yeah. And I know from hearing him talk that he has this really profoundly, like this really huge focus on individuality, which I discovered him just as I was discovering what I thought was the divide between individuality and ideology. So he just like, it really clicked right at the right time for me, and it made a lot of sense. But in my community, I think when I like just doing this, just us talking about it, I feel like it could give people this impression like that it says something negative about maybe us talking about this.
Right.
And I don't know, is that something you've had to navigate?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I purposefully stay away from anything that borders politics or like hot button issues. Cause I think of that as like an extension of pop in a sense. Like we're constantly in a place where the powers that be are trying to make people hate each other. And so like, I'm very intentional to like stay away from hot button issues. And I know that like a lot of my close friends think Jordan Peterson is really problematic.
Yeah.
And things he says is really problematic. And I respect that, and like there are some things that he says I don't agree with.
Yeah.
There's actually quite a few things I don't agree with Jordan Peterson, but for me, it's like I'm searching for truth. And so I want to be the kind of person that can find truth anywhere.
Yeah.
And so if that's in someone that's like Jordan Peterson or someone that's like a far left, considers himself far left, or even someone that's like right leaning, like if they have something to say that rings true, like, okay, like I want to be kind of like a sponge in that way, almost able to like pick up. And I also want to, I guess with what I say and the life that I live, I don't want to be the kind of person that people think about and they think about like my rigid ideas that I have. Like here's something, maybe this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but like individualism and kind of one interesting topic maybe we could dive into a little bit is individualism and the collective.
Exactly. Yeah. And,
I talk with my brother a lot because him and I disagree on a lot of stuff, but we actually like fundamentally agree on a lot. We just think the answer is different, and so I find that like, I don't know if he would listen to this, but like I connect a lot with what he says, even though like we disagree on some things.
You talking about your brother?
My brother. Yeah. He, he focuses a lot on the collective, and I kind of tend to focus on the individual.
Mm-hmm.
And we think about things in that way. And like, it becomes kind of an argument of what came first, like the chicken or the egg. Like, is it the collective? Is it the individual? And I guess I kind of tend towards thinking that like starting with the individual, starting with like what you choose to do with your life, how you choose to see the world, how you choose to treat people, the kind of person you become, that allows you to engage the collective in a meaningful way. And like, I think I don't like the divide between like talking about individualism versus the collective, because I don't see them as different. I see them kind of as one and the same, and I see them as like, we start with ourselves, and like if we are full of pride or we're full of anger, we cannot like we're blinded to see the need in someone else, and like we're not able to like see where we could be loving to someone that needs it. So it's like, if for us to deal with our own pride, to deal with our own anger, to deal with our own bitterness, allows us to like take an outward approach to the world and actually solve problems that exist on a collective page. And so like, yeah, I'm just not interested in talking about like, what should the government do to deal with this topic? Because how am I gonna change that? You know what I mean? Like, I have to start really small, and I can, in my own family, like I start with myself and my wife. That's what matters to me first. That's like the foundational. And then we have a good relationship, so that gives me capacity to like reach out and love on friends and like be there for the friend that's struggling. Or like, we had someone pass the church that I play at. We had someone pass away from COVID like a couple weeks ago, and just like to be able to like see with eyes with compassion, like have eyes of compassion for this terrible situation. And, I just think that the more we're focused on like our ideas about politics, or our ideas about what should they do, we like just totally miss out on actually being able to be effective in implementing change in the world on a collective level, I guess.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So.
I like this subject. I just don't know even where to start. It's so massive.
It's a big one, yeah.
Like, my concern, my focus as it relates to ideology is something like, ideology is how we learn to belong to a collective. Mm-hmm. And so I have another big issue. It's like a trilogy of issues. It's individuality, ideology, and identity. And I think what I noticed was it's kind of like that Jungian stuff with archetypes and stuff. It's like, I would be like, well, I'm a Christian and Christians do this, so that's what I do. And then I'd be like, well, I gave that up, and now I'm an atheist and a materialist, and this is what they do, so that's what I do now. Yeah. I noticed that every time I had some kind of identity that I described myself with, I let it inform how I acted.
Yeah.
And I did that with liberalism too, and so then I finally just said, I drew a line in the sand. I can't do that anymore. Like, right. I'm not being a me, period. The only time I feel like I'm being a me is arguably when I'm making music and stuff. And even then, I notice sometimes a temptation to act like a musician.
Yeah, like, right.
To wear this
like
kind of clothes.
And a little bit like,
like I'm cool.
Right.
Like I smoke cigarettes.
Right,
and, like be that identity. So I started with trying to avoid identity. It eventually came to ideology, and then it was like a brutal look at individuality. Like, like finally starting to do therapy and like learn about myself and invest in, like myself. And so for me, the whole idea of a collective is that just like whatever, just like a brick wall, just like a log cabin, just like whatever. Yes, it's a undeniable fact that the end result of the collective exists, like that it's all there, just like the rest of the outside world is out there, but it is still made up of individuals, and the quality of that collective is dictated by the quality of those individuals.
Yeah.
And if it's full of corrupt, awful individuals like the Soviet Union was, or like like Nazi Germany was, if it's full of people who have they have surrendered their individuality to a bad idea, then it is a corrupt collective.
Yeah.
And if it's made up of the absolute best, highest character, highest quality individuals, it will be a better system of organization. It'll be a better collective. And so for that reason, I think where I fall on that is not to deny the importance of collective actions, but to point out that those actions are going to be a lot better if we have a culture that's committed to individuals having the absolute best character they possibly can.
Totally. Yeah, I understand the importance of talking about the collective.
Yeah.
It's like where do you order it? How do you order it?
Right.
What comes first, you know? And I think that any ideology that has people pointing the finger, like, and I'm not saying that like we shouldn't call out hypocrisy and evil when we see it, because that's like hugely important. But any ideology that like points the finger over encouraging action, it misses something. Not that it's wrong 100% or that it's right. It misses something, you know? So like, I think about the capacity for me to just be a bad person. Like I'm very capable of being a bad person. Yeah. I'm capable of being hateful. I'm capable of being selfish and prideful and angry. And I'm capable of being like a cut your throat to get ahead kind of person, and backstabbing and talking about people behind their backs. I'm capable of all that. And the acknowledgement and the recognition of that in me can help me strive for something that's not that. You know, and like you brought up Nazi Germany, like there was probably a lot of well-meaning people that like found themselves supporting the Nazi regime. Yep. It's like, how did that happen? And our modern culture is just like, well, they were just evil.
Exactly.
But that's too shallow.
Too simple.
It's way too simple, because like you're gonna say that every single person that did that was like to their core evil. Like they weren't at one point a human, you know? Right. And that's a dangerous thing to say. I don't know if that's like, you know, gonna get me in any hot water, but I just think about like, you know, in order to be good people and to love others and to care for the oppressed, like we have to see just how oppressive we can be, and how, you know, all the things I said before. It's that's something that like that drives me, is like the only reason I talk about all the stuff with social media and the immediacy and like trying to strive for something deeper is because I have spent long seasons of my life like a zombie. Just I've spent like depressed seasons of my life just any free moment I had watching a TV show. Yeah. Like just trying, I'm like literally, I was, you know, looking back, I was literally trying to waste away my life because I didn't want to live it. I didn't want to actually experience it. I wanted to just hide in like the latest Netflix show. So I know, like I say all that stuff because like I am that. Like I'm striving to not, I'm striving to come out of that and to be a good person, you know, whatever that means. And, you know, someone that can actually like inspire others. Like you had Chazare on this podcast. Yeah. And like, I think about people in my life that have been incredibly encouraging to me. And I said earlier, like, I don't feel like it's something my businesses are something I built, because there were so many people that supported me. Like Chazare is one of the guys, like he's the guy outside of my own dad, my own family, that when he heard I was making drums, like he was 100% in. Like he was like, make me a kit. And then anything I've done, he's been like, And so I look at him like I really respect him, and I almost like strive to be like him in that way, because he is an unbelievable talent on the drums.
Yeah.
If you've ever heard him play, like he could be a household name in the drumming community. And he focuses his energy not on promoting himself.
Yeah.
He focuses his energy on like lifting up other people, and like choosing to be a side person for like a lot of bands in this area. And like,
Yep.
So I see people like Chazare, and that really inspires me. That to me seems like, okay, this is something that has value. Like this way of being has value. And it's like, yeah, I'm trying to become that. I don't think I am that. I'm trying to become that. And I think that's like, individualism is not, I think also our culture is so intent on glorifying youth, and like, you're supposed to be successful immediately. And you've got TikTok stars that are like 17 and have, billions of views or whatever. I don't know how many views they have. Maybe it's billions, and they're making millions of dollars a year, and they're famous, you know? And it's like, what happens when that 17-year-old is 40? Like, how are they going to live a fulfilling life? You know what I mean? Like, unless they reinvent themselves to become something new, or they're going to live their whole life looking back on when they were famous as a TikTok star. Like, what kind of life is that?
Yeah, man. I've been like kind of pondering that as like a, early 30s artist who, honestly, I really do fight feelings sometimes of just like, it's just too late. Like these days, 30-year-olds don't make like, no, there's no room for 30-year-olds, especially because, especially right now, like the culture of music is so different, and so much of it is just like, you download some MIDI tracks offline and you record your own lyrics to it, and then you put it on SoundCloud, or you do this stuff on TikTok or whatever. Everything's so different now that a 30-year-old, songwriter is kind of like old hat, I feel that sometimes.
Yeah.
And in my heart, I don't believe it's true. And when I go play shows, I see that it isn't true.
Yeah.
But psychologically, it's kind of hard to fight that sometimes.
Do you think it's because I was having a conversation with my buddy about this the other day? Like, we were talking about how one time I went to see this Eagles tribute band with my dad. And, Eagles are like my dad's favorite group, or one of my dad's favorite groups. And I'm looking around at the crowd, and there's a really good Eagles tribute band. I wish I could remember the name of them. But
Seagulls?
Maybe Seagulls. That would be a great name for Eagles tribute band, if it isn't already taken. But I was looking around the crowd, and it was like 95% was like looked just like my dad. Like dad's age, And I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, like, and however many decades, like, you're gonna have like a Billie Eilish tribute band, and it's gonna be all these 60-year-olds like singing the songs of Billie Eilish, and how like, I don't know how that connects, but just that how youth, something about this time of your life, like your 20s. Like I'm in my early 30s too, but like your early 20s is when you define yourself as a human.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that like societally we almost glorify that season of a person's life.
Yeah.
And we like constantly look back. But other cultures around the world, like it's the exact reverse. Like if you're a young person, like you are sitting around the campfire, like listening to the elder talk.
Right.
And your respect and reverences for the elder. And I would prefer to live in a, society that was like that.
Oh, I totally hear that, man. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird, but oh no, I had a thought. What was it? It's, oh no, I had something relevant. What was it? I think I've lost it. Timothy.
It was the Seagulls. The Seagulls thing threw you off.
Seagulls. For a second, I thought a Beagles would be a better name. Side B.
Oh man. It's awesome.
Well, I might have lost my thought. Damn, what were you just talking about? I hate it when this happens.
Oh, society's emphasis on youth.
Yeah. Well, got it.
Yeah. Happy to hear that.
Man, yeah, so I saw an article go around from American Songwriter. I think it was this week, maybe last week, but it was like, I think part of the reinforcement of that idea I was just expressing about like feeling like have windows closed now, have doors permanently shut. A big part of that too is nostalgia. A big part of that is sort of like this. There's this thing that seems to be post-COVID where a new need for nostalgia exists, and apparently it is being expressed in the success of music. Apparently, if I read the article correctly and remember it, I believe it said that for the first time since streaming has existed, old music from like the 80s or prior outperformed new music on like Spotify during the pandemic and stuff.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah, first time ever since streaming, and that's interesting. And I think they further contextualize that by kind of looking at album sales and talking about record sales. I think now have officially surpassed CD sales as a primary medium that isn't digital streaming. Like,
interesting, yeah.
There's these new trends over the last 2 years that are starting to really reveal that this is not a figment of people's imagination. Like what we're seeing in the podcast world, in the music world, in the movie world, this like surge of nostalgia is actually being, I think, driven by demand rather than by, like whatever the opposite of demand is.
Honestly, like the trend of people listening to 3-hour-long podcasts.
Yeah.
I mean, like that is, I'm a consumer of that market, like just listening to podcasts that are like hours long.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great. It's great to do as I'm doing little mindless work. Like but it does indicate hopefully something good in that we are as a culture starting to reject just the instant gratification. And we're actually like engaging something that like requires investment on our part,
I mean, I think we're starved for it,
Yeah.
Like entertainment for so long has been either, and songs have shrunk, like they're constantly doing this. Like a new genre will come up and blow up and songs will be 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
And then like as soon as it's commodified, the songs are 3 minutes long now.
Yeah.
And
what's a 3 minute and 20 second is like the radio edit.
And then TV shows, TV, it's funny. We subscribed for so long to this cable system of like, our show that we like is going to be on for like 20 minutes and there'll be commercials in between. Yep. And then we get Netflix and we can watch our show for like 8 hours at a time. And we do it. It's crazy.
And I mean, I don't know about you, but like my wife and I will sit down and be like, you want to watch a movie? And then we're like, we don't really want to commit to a movie. And then we watch 6 hours of a show.
Yeah.
we were like tricking ourselves into thinking like, it's just 20-minute episodes, you know, like it's less commitment on our part.
Let's do 14 of them.
Yeah, let's do 14 30-minute episodes. Oh man. Yeah. I think it does bode well. I mean, what you're saying about that podcast, just like I do think we're starved for a lot of things. I mean, I go to this Muay Thai gym in
Do you really?
8 Points in Winston.
Huh.
And I haven't been able to like really invest in it like I want to, just because of the physical demands of making cymbals kind of is like my workout, I guess. But I watch like people there. I mean, they're so hungry, and they find like a community and a family at that place, and they go every day, and they're just like working out the techniques. And I was thinking about it. It's like it's giving them something tactile.
Yeah.
Because we're so starved for something tactile. An analog,
I've been tempted to do exactly that, or like boxing or something. One, I'm lacking exercise like a lot, but two, just like more of that like inner body experience instead of like all my skills being in the front of my face, in the front of my head. Like, obviously, I can convert them to something that makes noise, but like.
Right.
Just something that puts me in more of my full body. I think that would be really cool. How long have you been doing that?
Not very long. So I don't want to pretend like I'm some like Muay Thai guy. But I went for a little while I went for a few months last year, and then I got like a hand injury from hammering cymbals, and I just asked the owner if he could like delay my thing. So I'm about to start it back up.
Very cool.
But I have some buddies that are really into it, and they're doing like the semi-professional thing, and I think it's like something elemental. it's like it gets back to like who we are as people. It almost like connects us to our caveman ancestors, like where they had to fight to survive, and it's fulfilling, you know, like, and I get that from cymbal making, just this like very heavy hammer, swinging it for hours, and how hard it is and how sore my arm is at the end of a session, and I got to rest it, and like I just love it. Like it just gives me a big old dose of what is it, serotonin or whatever the happy drug is that our brains
or dopamine.
Dopamine, yeah. So that's where my like creative mind is very much in like this space of like getting away from digital as much as I can, much as I can feasibly do it. And I'm going to do this thing at, the Public House in Winston. So we're starting like a weekly music thing that's kind of like, I'm trying to figure out how to describe it, because I don't want it to sound like it's an open mic or a jam session. Like I want it to be a little bit more curated than that, but it's just out of the effort just to like go somewhere, be with other musicians and just play music.
Yeah.
Like it could be jazz, it could be funk, it could be singer-songwriter stuff. And we're going to, as it grows and develops, we're going to start maybe having like one Monday of the month is like especially for singer-songwriters, and then the next Monday is like a jazz improv session, and then the next one is like hip hop and whatever, and I'm even approaching it like I don't even care if it like quote unquote successful, if it like packs out. Like I just want to do it.
You and myself and another guy I know are all interested in that same thing, and if we played our cards right and we maybe somewhat talk to each other, we could probably have something go on like every week of the month or something. If we
should. There's a guy, Charlie Hunter, guitarist.
Charlie Hunter, is that Old Man Hunter's son?
Old Man Hunter. I don't know who Old Man Hunter is.
That's just his last name.
Old Man Hunter. Yeah, sure is, son. Old Man Hunter. So Charlie Hunter is like a ridiculously talented guitarist, and he does like this. He plays a hybrid guitar, so it's just a brand, and it's like literally bass and guitar at the same time. Which, if you say that, a lot of musicians will go, okay, it's like gimmicky or whatever. But this dude like grooves his butt off. Yeah. Is playing like the funkiest stuff on bass and guitar. He's doing it all at the same time. He was on, I think he was signed to Blue Note, I think, back in the day. But he used to live in New York and like has played with all of the greats and just knows everyone. But he moved to Greensboro.
Oh, I did. I heard about this. Yeah.
He moved to Greensboro, and he's built this music scene, and he's inspired people to do exactly what we're talking about. And I feel very inspired by him too. And they have this spot called the Flatiron in Greensboro where they do music almost every night. And it's just something different almost every night. Yeah. A great drummer by the name of George Sluppick just moved from Memphis. And so him and Charlie are doing like a duo gig there every, 1 night every week. And that's inspired me to be like, well, we should do that here in Winston, like just get musicians together. And there's something about like going into something like that and just not caring if anyone likes it. You just get in there with the mentality, like we're going to do something real with other people, musicians, and we're going to take it seriously. And honestly, like the finances come, the people come, because people feed off of that kind of energy when it's not so like, it's not like so performance-y. It's like these are musicians having like a moment. I was listening to the episode you had with John Ray the other day as well, and John talking about improvisation and how it's dangerous. Like you're on like the edge, and sometimes it sounds like garbage. And then other times you play things you could never think up in a million years. Man. I'm super inspired and excited by that kind of stuff.
I am too, and specifically that like we need something to happen already in Winston, and I think orienting it that way, like this is for musicians among each other, and who cares if there's an audience or not? Like clearly we have had a hard time, and me as an act, I've been playing here for like 8 years or something, and it's surprising when I see like other acts that are well established, sort of like not really, there's like not an audience to connect to right now.
Yeah.
And it's not that I am entitled to one by any stretch of the imagination. It's just like, I just remember it used to be that people came to shows that I did with other acts, and it was just like, it felt like that part of the community was hungry for music to go on in their community. So I was one of many that they would try out and go see. Lately, it's been a tough struggle, and I just think, okay, my answer to that might be, instead of worrying about it from that angle, I'll do this with musicians. Like, that's the whole thing. That's why you're here. That's part of the reason you're here, and why John and all these people have been around, because I'm trying to connect more with like my community of fellow creators more than anything right now.
That's the idea. We need to talk after this. Like, that's the idea. It's like, what if it was geared for musicians? Like, you show up with your horn, and we'll be playing, and then you come up and like we'll do something. If you want to play a song that you've written, if you want to like do a completely free improvisation, and we'll do that. And I think that's like you said, people are like, musicians are hungry for that.
Yes.
And I've learned, that like just waiting around for someone to ask me to play is like not the greatest thing to do, because I'll be waiting a long time. You know what I mean? And I get to play fairly often, but like obviously not as much as I would like. And the stuff I really connect with is like those. Honestly, I'm a lot like John, and just like I love improvisation, and like especially like not free improvisation, but just you really don't know what's going to happen, and you kind of just embrace this very uncomfortable place, because like so many cool things can happen when you let your guard down a little bit.
Man, I'm starting to really see like a relationship with like what John was describing in that episode about like what you bring to the table and how it's present there. Like, it never has been more clear to me, I don't think. And I had a really interesting experience that nobody else got to see other than he and I. But at the end of that, we were like, he was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, let's make some music. Let's hit record. Let's do some stuff. And we did. And it was so interesting because he, just like he was describing, he just started playing. He was like, you just follow me. And I just knew, like, I could tell immediately I had this block based in the fact that I was kind of like, I really admired John Ray. And like, I really just like he's been just this dude that I've just like watched make music for such a long time. And it's just like I had that block there. Couldn't get by it. Kept having to like stop wherever we were and just acknowledge the fact that I couldn't get there. Yeah. And then like by the third one we laid down, I finally started to get somewhere. But the whole time I was like more aware of every little thing, every little imperfection than I ever had been while playing drums. I play those things I play them every day. And I'm not embarrassed about playing drums, but for some reason in that moment, being aware of that vulnerability, it like shut my abilities down. It was crazy.
I know that feeling. I've felt it many times. Yeah. I actually think back on when I was in college, we had this little Monday night jazz jam session at the coffee shop in the student union. And when we started it, there was like no one came, and it was like 5 people would be in there, and we'd be up on the stage like playing jazz standards. And then we caught a moment in time for all of us where we were able to let go of judgment. And that was really what it was. It was like I had this moment of realizing like how judgmental I was over myself. And over the other musicians, and how they were, and like thinking about how judgmental they must be towards me. If I'm this judgmental towards myself, like how much more so are they judging me? And like we caught a moment in time where we just let all of that go. And it was like, we weren't good. Like we were college age musicians that grew up in Boone or like somewhere in North Carolina trying to play jazz. Like not our culture, not our lived experience, but something we were really passionate about, you know? And like, so like technically it wasn't good, but we were exploring. And before you know it, like 100 people would show up every Monday. It would just be packed. And people loved it. Like they loved seeing people on the edge almost. Like it felt like very on the edge. We had a couple professors come and give us some kind of like scathing criticism of like how bad we were. You know, and it was just, they were coming at it from like an educational standpoint. Like, hey, you need to like honor the tradition a little bit more than you are. You're playing Autumn Leaves as a funk tune. Like, you shouldn't be doing that, or whatever it was, you know. But it connected with people. And so I leaving college for like a decade, I would just look back on that, and like that really was the ultimate musical experience I ever had. Until I started to realize like, oh, like it has to do with judgment. It has to do with how judgmental I am over myself. And so I started to like try to practice that. And that's something I'm still working on, is just like practicing letting go of judgment over myself and being in a moment. Even if I'm with someone and playing with someone like John, which I get to play with him in a band I'm in called Victoria. And
you're in Victoria?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, Chazare and I both play drums with Victoria.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Victoria.
Tori's music is amazing songwriter. Her new album is going to be so stellar. Charlie Hunter actually produced it and
very
like
cool.
added his whole thing to it. So it's going to be awesome. But getting to play with John, it's like I start to realize those moments those thoughts come into my brain of like, oh, it's John Ray. Mm-hmm. And then I go back to practicing, like letting go of that judgment, you know. Yeah. I want to get even better at it, and that's the kind of thing I'm talking about with we just got to start it and just do it, you know.
I'm into it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I notice that realm for me as in like when I'm playing drums, and that's where I'm an instrumentalist, and I'm fine with guitar, but guitar is like that space, and writing songs, I lead, like I have people play with me, but it's just not the same thing, because it feels like that's my world, the songs that I write. Yeah. But drums is where I have to communicate with other people, and that's where that judgment stuff comes in. And
totally.
I think, being in a position where I could like practice that more could only be, I'd love that.
It's good. Yeah. I remember one of the things that helped me kind of reach another deeper level with it was I got to sit in and play with Charlie some. And like Charlie's literally toured with some of my drum idols, like guys that are like top of the top, like seriously talented dudes. And then I would, like every now and then I would go and sit in and play with Charlie. And like that was a moment where it was just like, I can't afford any judgment over myself. Like I have to be here. I have to be in the moment right now. I don't have a choice. Like it's either like crash and burn or go. Yeah. And then I started to find out like the way he approaches playing with a drummer. And he said this actually at one point. He was like, it doesn't matter what drummer I'm playing with, the drummer's right. And I was like, that's why it feels so good to play with you. You know, because I come in with my sense of rhythm, my depth, however deep or shallow it is, of groove. And he's over here like this, you know, he's so a deep well of music. And he instantly kind of latches onto whatever I'm doing. And I've never felt that level of groove in my life playing with anyone than I have with Charlie. And it's been super inspiring, and realizing like he's not judgmental. Like he's like, oh cool. He's like looking at you as you're playing and just like kind of in it with you, like making eye contact. And I'm sitting there like trying to like, you know, break eye contact or like get in my own world. And he's kind of like, it's almost like he's like inviting me to like, no, be here in this moment with me. Yeah. It's awesome.
I love that.
Yeah.
Man. One last question before I think we got to shut this down. Entrepreneurship. Are you glad that you, like, I don't know what your story is if you had options to like go down a different road, but are you glad you went down a road where you got your own business? Like, what has that meant for you?
It's been the most fulfilling thing in my life, honestly. It's been amazing. Like, it's been a totally unexpected gift. The people I get to meet, the conversations I get to have, like, honestly, there's an emphasis kind of to touch on the whole topic of religion one more time. Like, there's this big emphasis on evangelism in the Christian church, and like this kind of talk about like sharing your faith with people. And I always found that, like, you know, Christians are kind of insular and churches are kind of insular. And so they gather and they're kind of, you know, in their own little world with people that think the same way. And like something for me, one of the most fulfilling things for music and business has been getting out and encountering people that think a lot of different things. And like I've had moments where I feel like deeply spiritual moments that had nothing to do with like faith, but they were deeply spiritual because it was like I was talking with someone, connecting on a level that was like we would have never gotten here unless we had been friends for like 6 years, you know, like, and music was the connection, or my business was the connection. And I've had conversations with guys that were in my shop that were like talking about how like they were really excited about whatever I was making them, and then all of a sudden before I knew it, they were talking about like, yeah, I was an alcoholic and I was ready to kill myself, and music brought me back. And like it's heavy. Like I even feel it now, like the heaviness of that.
Yeah.
Like I can never reach that level with another person in any other avenue. So it's like this is my avenue to kind of have these very deep spiritual connections with people that don't have to do with like, I'm not trying to convert anybody, or like, you know, I'm not trying to convince anybody to come to my side. Like I'm getting to like have a human experience and connect and share in that common humanity with someone else that has a completely different life experience than me. Really, really love that.
I really love that too, man. It's no surprise to me that we were able to have like a easygoing conversation. Like I don't know. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, it's been a blast.
I truly hope, honestly, like it's not worth saying, perhaps, or maybe it's weak to say, but I hope nobody dismisses all the interesting stuff that you've had to say, or that I think we've tried to share together.
Totally.
Just in the name of like,
right.
They don't
like
hate all
person.
Conservatives, or they like this person. It's like, we got to get past this stuff at some point. I really feel a desperate need for us as a community to get past all this like sort of, you know, like finger pointing, like what you were talking about, and condemning other people. And
let's focus on connection. Like
let's connect with people.
We got a lot more that unites us than divides us, I think.
Yep,
for sure.
And art, I continue to say, our art is, I think, the absolute best example of how that happens.
Totally.
So we're gonna talk more, and we're gonna do some stuff.
Let's do it.
I believe.
Oh
so,
yeah.
Timothy, thank you for coming on the
so
podcast, man. Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
All right.